If you've ever tried to write a song, you'll know the hardest part isn't usually the idea, but rather taking that idea and turning it into a finished song. So over the course of this video, you're going to see how I took my song, Whiskey and Wine, from idea to release in 7 simple steps. I built the track from scratch, starting with the chords, then turning it into a full arrangement, then finally going through production and promotion. And I've designed this system to be achievable within a week's time frame, so you can get your music out there as soon as possible. I know I personally struggle with procrastination when it comes to finishing my creative project, so I gave myself this challenge to help motivate me to get myself out there and put more music in my portfolio. So if you're ready to follow along and get started, let's start with step 1, which is the idea. So usually how I start my songwriting is with a lyric or a title, which I think is a bit weird, especially in the titles case for most songwriters, but personally it just helps me kind of ground the entire theme of the song into one coherent idea. That being said though, this time I do not have a title or anything to kind of work off of, so I'm going to start musically and work on a chord progression first and see what we can come up with. Usually when I'm starting with music rather than the lyrics, I tend to like to try and find an artist or a song in particular that I really like the sound of and that I'd like to try and draw some elements from when I'm coming up with a chord progression. So this time I've been loving the music of Paolo Nutini recently, particularly his 2022 album Last Night in the Bittersweet. So I think this time I'm going to try and take something from that album, the kind of slow acoustic styling, the atmospheric textures on tracks like Through the Echoes or I really like Abigail, and let's just see what we can come up with that as a baseline for what we're doing. Just playing around with chords at the moment, trying to find what exactly I want for this song. I think it's definitely going to be an E, because I mean, who doesn't like the warmth of a nice E major chord? But that being said, it's always nice to add some extensions in, so I think I might switch out the E major here for like a E major 7, just to add that little bit of jazzy spice to the mix. I'd just like to make a note here about using extensions and making use of other types of triads in your writing. While basic major and minor chords definitely have their place, you rarely do start to unlock a much deeper set of emotions when you include sevenths, ninths, and even suspended chords. Storytelling doesn't just have to be within the lyrics of a song, and we can get a lot of colour out the harmony within the arrangement. Oftentimes the things we write about do show feelings that are way more complex than simply happy or sad. And by adding in extra notes or substituting some for others, we get to explore all of that range and tell a story without even needing words. Really loving the feel of this kind of E major 7 shape going to kind of a C sharp minor 7 and then going to an A sus2. So currently our progression is sounding like this. Really nice warm sound. On the end there, so I'm going to try and play around and add something that's a bit more complex and makes it more of a guitar line and riff rather than just a chord progression. Now I definitely have a tendency to write complex riffs on the guitar that are probably too busy for their own good. I'd say it's a result of all of my guitar influences being such virtuosos, but I think with this track I want to strip back my writing for once and write something that's a bit more digestible and relaxed. So here's what I came up with. Okay, brilliant. We seem to have a chord progression now to work with, and that only took me a little bit to come up with, but I'm going to try and work around and see if I can find maybe a B section or a pre-chorus, see where I can take it. Obviously we're not going to have a finished kind of song by the end of day 1, but it's good to have a nice idea of the direction we want to go in. And with that direction solidified, I managed to come up with a few more sections, being a pre-chorus and a chorus, and some initial melody ideas, which gives us a starting point for step 2, which is lyrics. Now if you started with lyrics in step 1 rather than the chords, now's the time to work on the music. But either way, the point of step 2 is to solidify a structure for the song using the lyrics as guidance. And by the end of day 2, we should have a skeleton of something that we can play all the way through. I spent some time at the piano first, making notes about what ideas came to mind while listening to a recording of a song to help feel out the melody. And I can't lie, a lot of this is trial and error. I know you've been. Na, 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 na. But the technique of working out a vocal melody and then fitting words to it later is an approach used by some of the most legendary songwriters of all time, like Max Martin and Paul McCartney, and it makes our writing more intentional in general. So it's something I'd recommend you try if you haven't done it before in your workflow. I know you've been kissing on the whiskey and wine, but it was nice to see you smile. I know. Started the same way. Started the same way there, yeah. I think one of the main things that inspires me in my writing is all of the amazing people that I've had the opportunity to meet throughout my life. So let me tell you a little story about one of my friends who inspired me to write this song. So my friend is an extremely talented individual, a fellow creative and musician, and someone who's just an absolute joy to be around. However, unfortunately, that joy doesn't really seem to follow them into their personal life. I often find them down in the dumps about things, and honestly, who can blame them? It seems like every day, the world around us becomes more dark and overbearing, a point where people just can't seem to find a way out. I think especially people just feel powerless and lost against the blatant corruption and evil that's in this world. And so they try and find ways to escape it, whether that be through music or art or less healthy habits like partying and isolation. I want to try and highlight the good and bad aspects of escapism and hopefully lift my friend's spirits with this song. So here we have my notebook with some of the lyrical ideas I've been thinking of for this song. I like to note some themes here at the bottom, some words that I can kind of branch off of with different ideas. I like to note phrases that I come up with during the process of writing, even if it's not necessarily something to do with the lyrics that I'm writing at the time, potentially just something that comes to mind. And then here I've actually got the kind of verses and the structure of what I'm writing down. While I'll definitely be refining a lot of the lyrics later on, for now we have enough material to come up with a structure, which you can see here, and we're going to take that structure into the next step of our process, which is the arrangement. Now, arrangement is probably the most important step when it comes to determining the scope of our song. And since I'm trying to fit these 7 steps into a week-long period, I'd suggest coming up with an arrangement plan that's achievable within a short time frame. Essentially, we need to create a list of instruments that'll be needed to bring our track to life and take it from a chord progression and some lyrics to a fully realised song. Again, this can be a very good opportunity to look back at our assessment track for ideas. Or you can do what I did in this scenario, which was to record the skeleton of my song, and then experiment with different instrumental choices over it to see what fits. Once we've got our arrangement plan, we can start to record all the instruments. For those wondering, I'm recording into Logic Pro using a Focusrite Scarlett Solo, and I'm recording the guitar and bass myself. However, if you're a musician in Brighton and you're looking for someone to collaborate and record with, my DMs are open. So I've got the kind of bare bones recording in now. We've got our acoustic guitar, got our 2 guitar tracks which are panned directly left and right. I like to give both of them slightly different tones even though they're on the same guitar, but you can use 2 guitars if you want, but it just creates a wider kind of array of sound. We've got a bass track and then we've got a bus with our drums in it. I'm just doing MIDI drums for this song because I don't have the facilities to record a proper drum kit, but that's alright, we're working up to there. It's just supposed to be an example of our arrangement decisions and what I kind of want the track to be sounding like when it's finished. This is completely unmixed though. Yeah, and that's the kind of vibe we're going for. I'm just doing some simple recording today to get the picture, just make sure I like how everything's sounding, and then once that's done, you can start getting on to step 4, which is recording. For real this time. Mid-video haircut. But yes, we are now on to recording the track fully, so getting all of the instruments in, getting all the overdubs, getting all the vocal layers in, because we are in phase 2 now of our 7-step process, which is basically where we'll start thinking about how we'll promote the track as well as finishing up the production. The reason we're thinking about promotion now is if you're following this 7-step process as kind of a weekly thing, this is probably when you want to start thinking about promotion, since ideally if you're starting on Monday, you'll be releasing the song on the Sunday. So Thursday, which is what we would be on, kind of day 4, is when we start thinking about pushing the song out to our fans. So the priority for step 4 is to get an MVP ready, which means to get a minimum viable product, something we can start to showcase to people even if it's not fully polished yet. So as I mentioned, I still need to record the vocals, and I need to record any overdubs for guitar and whatnot, and I'll catch you in a bit once that's done. Ooh, okay, that might be a new section. Let's go. So remember earlier when I said, and I think with this track I want to strip back my writing for once and write something that's a bit more digestible and relaxed. Yeah, that didn't happen, and instead I came up with a new section that kind of functions as a bridge, and it goes where the second verse of the song would go. Kind of a weird song structure, but I guess we're doing that from the get-go, so might as well go all in. Sometimes you'll get your best ideas later on into the creative process, and you've got to try and slot them in, but usually it's something that serves the song better as it's developed, so it's good to implement. I also then recorded all of the vocals, and this video is already too long to kind of cover all of that in detail, but for anyone who's wondering, I tend to have a lead vocal, then a double if it's appropriate to the style. For this song it wasn't. I also like to have a falsetto vocal that's an octave above the lead vocal, and then I dash in a few little harmonies here and there to just keep things interesting and colourful. Now that we've got our minimum viable product, it's time to move on to the 5th step, which is promotion. I'm going to preface by saying that the next 2 steps should be done simultaneously, so just keep that in mind while you're working on your song. But regardless, step 5 is all about packaging our song and building hype up to its release. And we'll focus on that first bit for the moment. When I'm talking about packaging, I'm talking about the imagery that's associated with our song. As what's going to make our track memorable is a great visual image alongside our great track. I'm talking primarily about the cover art here, but it additionally extends to the tone and the style of the promotional content we're going to be creating for the track. As my song is more laid back and intimate, I decided to go for a darker but warmer colour scheme, as if the cover art was lit by firelight. But I also made sure it wasn't very visually busy to help sell the atmospheric vibe of the song. This also extended to the short form content I made for the track, where as it's a more intimate song, I filmed just a simple video of me playing a guitar to the track in my bedroom and singing along, making sure that the lyrics were front and center. However, if you're doing a more energetic track, it makes sense to do a more heavily edited video with maybe some different camera angles. But as a general rule, just look at what artists who are doing the same kind of style as you do for their promotional content. The key takeaway though is this: the best strategy for getting people excited about your song is to turn its release into an event, solidifying it as a moment in time that people can be a part of and making use of the ever useful FOMO. And it doesn't have to be a physical event. If you do have the fan base and the resources to put on a release party or gig, then that's amazing. However, another good way of making it into an event is by tying a significant piece of content to its release. That could be a music or lyric video, a visualizer, or behind the scenes, or even just an announcement of some kind, like you've got more music on the way, which I hope you do. I personally made the video you're watching right now, which even though it's coming out a few days after the song's release, still functions as kind of a behind the scenes look at how the song was made. You want to give your audience something to engage with beyond just the song, which helps build up a strong community behind your work. As mentioned beforehand, you should be doing steps 5 and 6 simultaneously. And step 6 is mixing. And mind you, I'm not going to spend too much time on this step, just because I'm definitely not the most qualified person to be talking about production. I'm a songwriter first and foremost, and while I do understand how to mix, and I've been doing it for the past few years, it's definitely not my strong suit, and it's something that I'm still trying to get better at. My current level of mixing is only to about a demo's level of quality, and if you've never touched production before, or you're at my level of mixing, I can recommend some YouTube videos and some YouTube channels that have definitely helped me out, and that might help you. Either way, mixing the track is definitely where most of the effort in the process goes for me, and I usually spend a couple of days doing it, because I like to get creative and I want the song to be the best it can possibly be come the end. Here's how the song was sounding unmixed versus how it sounds mixed.
Out of the bar, I know you ain't got much but a soul and guitar and a passion for the world. It's too blind to see.
You've made it to the end. Woohoo! Probably shouldn't do that. Give yourself a pat on the back because it's release day and you've got a stellar track cooked up and ready to go. You can release your song however suits you best. If you're more established, you might want to release on all platforms. However, if you're a little less confident in your production, or maybe this is your first release, you might want to consider using platforms like SoundCloud, YouTube or Bandcamp just to test the water. Either way, be sure to be active on your social media during release day. Post a few stories about it and respond to those comments quickly to help drive engagement. And get all of your family and friends listening straight away so you can get that initial boost in numbers to help drive the success of your track. My song's been out for a few days now on SoundCloud, and I'm going to release it alongside all the rest of my music here on YouTube as this video goes live. So if you've enjoyed hearing about the creation of the track, I hope you enjoy listening to the finished product as well. With all that being said, if you do release a song using this process, do be sure to send it my way on both email and Instagram at Mikalan Music for both. And if you found this video helpful, a like, share and subscribe really does a lot to help me out. We are so close to 300 subscribers and it would just be a dream come true to me to be able to make YouTube into something that I can afford to put all of my time into to make more videos like this for you guys. Here's some other videos of mine you might like. Thank you ever so much for watching, and until next time, happy writing, folks.